Good afternoon. My name is Liz Cedillo-Pereira, and it's a pleasure to be here today for another series on the Dallas Bar Association's Living Legends series. Today we're here with the Honorable and Remarkable Sarah R. Saldaña, a living legend. And I'm excited about this conversation. I'm excited about the people who will be able to hear about her story and why she's a legend. So please welcome Sarah Saldaña.
Thank you, Liz.
Yeah.
I appreciate it. And I'm so glad you call me a living legend as opposed to the alternative, which, I prefer being living.
I prefer that myself. But you have a remarkable bio. And if I may just state some highlights here, because it is a very extensive and remarkable resume, CV. You've been the former director of the U.S. Department of Homeland Security, Immigration and Customs Enforcement during the Obama administration from 2014 to 2017. Time flies. You were also the first Latina, the second woman to hold the position of ICE director. And previously, you were the U.S. Attorney for the Northern District of Texas, making you the first Latina chief prosecutor in the state of Texas. You're also the former Deputy Criminal Chief for the Fraud and Public Corruption, a section of the Office of the U.S. Attorney for the Northern District of Texas. And before that, different roles within the federal government, private practice, as well as public service. Even a stint as a public school teacher, which I'm excited to hear more about during our conversation. In 2012, you were named one of the most influential Latinas, Hispanics in the nation by Poder Hispanic magazine. You received your BS from Texas A&I University, now part of the Texas A&M system. Also received Distinguished Alumni Award from the institution, as well as a JD from Southern Methodist University School of Law, and also a distinguished alum from SMU. Pony up, Sarah.
As you are, too.
Oh, well, thank you so much. We have that in common. So why don't we get started by you telling us a little bit about your upbringing, Sarah?
Well, thank you. And thank you for those comments. I appreciate you noting that. Both my schools I'm very proud of, and I'm so happy that you mentioned them. I go back a long time, 73 years, and I've had and very impoverished home when we were little. There were 7 of us, and I was the baby. And guess what? That makes you a little scrappy when you're the youngest of 7 siblings, and of course 4 of them were brothers. But somehow we made it through. My mom essentially raised us on her own. My dad was not reliable, but she did an extraordinary job, and I always have her in my mind as I've moved through all the decisions I've made in my life, career and otherwise, because she was quite a figure, a very prominent figure as I was growing up. So we got through that, and as I said, I think this was South Texas and Corpus Christi, a largely Hispanic community, even though Hispanics didn't hold power, as was very much the case in a lot of our Hispanic communities. I think things have changed a little bit today, not tremendously, but somewhat. And so that was kind of where I started.
Your origin story. Well, tell me about your 7 siblings. There were 7 of you total, so you had 6 siblings, is that right?
That's right.
And where did you fall? You were the very last?
I was the baby. And there's 15 years difference, almost a generation between myself and my oldest sister.
Seriously?
Which I remind her a lot about. So it was almost like 2 generations within our household. They were the older generation. We really didn't get to spend too much time together, because by the time I was getting a little older, my sister was already out of the house in her own work. And so, but each of them made an impression on me, some real good and some not so good.
Well, I bet you are the pride and joy, the apple of your family's eye.
I don't know about that, but I truly, they all have accomplishments that they have done on their own. I'm proud of them, and I tease them a lot, so forgive me.
Well, you said you're scrappy, but maybe it was that fighting spirits you had from the very beginning, the spirit of a champion.
Interesting point that you make. I think there is something to that. That is, when you start with such humble beginnings, you think you can kind of work your way and fight your way through to more and better. Like all parents, we always want what's best for our children, and hopefully better than what we had. And so I think my mother would be proud of all of us, really.
I'm sure she is, Sarah. And so tell me more about your mom. You said that she was a notable figure in your life. Like, what was it about her?
Well, her and my grandmother, her mother, whom I'm named after, a little brown woman of Indian, Native American descent, brown, rugged, wrinkled, a little fireball. If she was 100 pounds, that would be soaking wet. And if you can believe this, she had 25 pregnancies. And she was married at 13. And I've seen the marriage certificates, so that's not the little lore or stories that have come down. So can you imagine, 13-year-old, you're starting your family, and 25 pregnancies later, and the woman was tough as nails. Therefore, my mother, therefore me, I guess, is I did not have 25 pregnancies, but I did have this spirit that you can't keep me down, can't really keep me down. You can try, I can fall, but you can't keep me down. And I'm going to keep fighting.
So you'd say your grandmother was a small woman in figure, but probably a giant in your life, as you describe her.
Yes, absolutely. And then my mother, as I say, she kind of had, they were a beautiful couple, my mom and my dad, but she kind of had to make her way with 7 children, essentially on her own. But she did it, and she was a stay-at-home mom in the early years, until it was pretty clear that somebody had to be continuously present and reliable. So she went and got her nursing degree. And then she got a pharmacological certificate so she could dispense drugs, which would give her a little bit more money. The thing was, she chose to work, again, because of the premium that was put on the late shift, to 3 to 11. So as we were coming home from school, she was leaving for work. And that kind of gave me this sense of, I can create more problem to my mother than she already has to face on her own. So I think that kind of explains a little bit of this idea of keep your head down, study, do the best you can, and don't be an issue. Now, my brothers are another story. They would, they were unbridled and had a nice, they sowed wild oats. Very early on, but that's kind of the way I felt, was let's just not rock this boat that's already a problem for her.
But a hard work ethic.
Oh my gosh, hard work ethics. And again, isn't that something that we seem to learn really more from observing than saying? Mother was a woman of few words. There wasn't much she had to say for me to understand. As I'm seeing her walking down the street to get to the bus to get to her hospital where she worked as the nurse, that she certainly loved us, but she was going to take responsibility for this family, and that was very clear to me. She didn't have to say it, but I knew it.
I'm inspired, not having even met her. That's quite an experience she must have faced.
Yeah,
entering the workforce.
And again, let's not forget her mother and her experience. And then me, I guess I had it easy.
So your grandmother was Sarah R. Saldaña also? Or
yes,
Sarah?
No, Sara Tudón Garcia.
And your mother?
Was Inés Garcia Saldaña.
Yes. Well, thank you for paying tribute to them, because I think that their stories are important for others to know where you come from.
Yes.
And any stories that you remember from your youth about, what inspired you? Well, let me start by this. Did your mom ever say, Sarah, I want you to be an attorney?
No, no, no. I'm sure as she would say, her mother never told her you need to be a licensed vocational nurse with certification to dispense drugs. And that was a lofty thing. But again, one of the things I've learned being a living attorney is over time is how much really we owe to how we were brought up, how important it is to be the standard bearer, carry it forward, and then don't forget those that are coming up behind you. So important to continue kind of this idea of you can do it, you can. Don't sell yourself short.
But a lot of self-determination, a lot of self-motivation, and then seeing this backdrop of people in your life who were working so hard.
That's true. That's true. And as an example is, you have 7 of us.
Right.
We couldn't be more different from one another, even though we had the same 2 parents. Some distinction, I guess, between when I was a teenager versus my oldest sister when she was a teenager, certainly. But I mean, we've got one of everything within our family, but that's kind of the way life is.
But a common thread, I would imagine, in your family, what would that be?
That I think there was that determination. We all had, and I'm glad we didn't know it at the time. We had very low odds for success, and among the 7 of us, 5 of us have, all 7 of us have high school degrees. Not a big common thing at that time in those days in South Texas. In my Hispanic community, all of us have high school degrees. 5 of us have college degrees, and 3 of us have advanced degrees, JDs or master's degrees. And so that was one thing probably also that Mom instilled in us was, for example, seeing her say, being a nurse isn't enough. I can do more if I get this certification and can, actually have more responsibilities at my workplace. And I think most of us kind of saw that and thought, that's probably a good idea.
You said that you wanted to talk about one of your siblings.
Oh, my brother Lupe.
Yeah.
My brother Lupe. So he's part of that older group, right? He's 3rd down the line, and he has really made an impression on me over the years. There's a photograph of him with my little brother, with my brother that's closest to me, a year and a half apart, where he's on a bicycle, and it's a little raggedy old thing, and he's a teenager. He can't be more than 13 or 14 himself, but he had a paper route. And I'll tell you, that man has been counting his pennies ever since. He's so involved and thoughtful and eager to have sufficient economic needs, maybe because of where we came from. And so while we didn't spend much time together because of the difference in our ages and where we were at the time when I became more conscious of my family and my place in it, he was headed to Vietnam. And what would he have been, in his 20s maybe? And he left before I arrived from school, and I couldn't have been more than 10th grade, maybe 11th grade. And he left me a message that said, reach as far as you can, don't settle. And it just really made an impression on me that he would take the time on his way to a very dangerous assignment and leaving his own family. He was married very, very young, behind, but that he took the time to scratch out a little note to his little sister, who he didn't know if she would amount to anything, opening up the thought and the concept that do reach as far as you can because, so you fall a little short. But if you don't reach, you'll never, have that ability to accomplish something that maybe would bring you a lot of satisfaction. And so I was pretty impressed by him in that note.
What it sounds like, it stayed with you. Maybe
It did.
It embedded an impression on you.
It did. And that same brother, when I was running for judge quite a few years ago, came up to Dallas and was knocking on doors and running up and down. He wore his classic sweatsuit. And I got a note, an email from a stranger who said, I didn't know you. I voted for you. I wanted you to know that. But I need to tell you, I was so moved by your brother. He told me he was your brother. Running around talking about you and being so persuasive and so enthusiastic about your candidacy. And that is true family.
Well, it sounds like Lupe has been in your corner for a very long time.
He has. He has.
Thank goodness for Lupe and brothers like him. I only have brothers, so I know what that's like.
Yeah.
For your brothers to be proud of you. It comes from a real sincere place. And so I would imagine, as you're saying that, you became the highest ranking Latina in law enforcement in the Obama administration.
I did. My career path was not a straight line, not linear at all. It zigzaged and it zagged, and I don't know that I've ever would have predicted. Was I a small child running around the house saying I want to be the director of ICE someday and be in charge of the nation's immigration policies? No, I didn't. But it's so important to me to share with others that the most important thing to keep in mind is when an opportunity comes up, and to recognize as an opportunity and as something that obviously you have a choice either to take it or not, and nobody will begrudge your decision. But what I'm saying is keep your eyes open. Opportunities come at the oddest places in the oddest times. I would not have been U.S. Attorney before becoming the Director of ICE if I hadn't run into Judge Jane Boyle, our federal judge, one of our longstanding federal judges here in town, who was the first. You mentioned I was the second. She was the first woman in a 130-year history of U.S. attorneys in the Northern District of Texas. It took them a little while to realize that women could actually run a U.S. attorney's office. It's referred to as an extra large because there was 100+ prosecutors in the office.
Another SMU law grad.
And yes, she is. She is.
I bet she'll be interviewed at some point.
Fantastic judge and wonderful role model for me. But here I am, just as an example of recognizing opportunity and it happening at times when you're not expecting it. I'm going to my local Starbucks. I've taken a retirement from law practice because my son was born. And
I thought that was a sabbatical.
It wasn't a sabbatical. It was the office pool was that I was coming back, but no, it was not. And so I run into Judge Boyle, and she was asking me, well, what are you doing? And I said, well, I'm essentially retired and enjoying life at home. And she said, well, you need to come to the U.S. Attorney's office. I said, there's Boyle. I'm a civil attorney. My experience has been as a civil attorney. I fight over money and property. I don't fight. I don't engage in fights in which people's lives are at stake, prison sentences or more.
Interesting.
And she said, no, consider it. And I suggested to her, okay, well, there's the civil side of the house. And she said, no, you need to come do criminal work. I said, for sure, that's not going to happen. And as it turned out, I took her up on her offer to come into the office. I fell in love with the office. Her, again, as a role model for an upstanding United States attorney representing the government in 100 counties in North Texas. And I ended up doing it, and I loved it. I loved it. It's one of the most special things that I have done, and I've done a little bit of everything, as I said earlier. But it was a matter of this notion that I was so blessed with so many things that had happened in my life up to that point. And now I get to stand before a jury and say, my name is Sarah Saldaña, and I represent the United States of America. And you are representing the people of the United States when you enforce the criminal laws of this country. And it was momentous. Now, what if I hadn't gone in for a cup of coffee that particular afternoon, or
That's what I'm wondering.
yeah, and Judge Boyle hadn't been there, and as I said, that then led to a pool of U.S. attorneys that President Obama was looking at to say, I need a director, I need him now, and once again, I get the call, and I'm like, no, I don't think I'm very happy being the United States Attorney in Dallas. And this woman who was with the White House was very well informed and good at her job. She said, look, just come up to Washington and meet some people, the Attorney General of the United States, and others, and you'll like this, and then you can make a decision later. And I thought, okay, well, that's harmless. I'll go up there. I did love the idea of the mission. I shared it with my family. Again, we've got 6 brothers and sisters, and
Your closest advisors?
yeah, my closest advisors, just along with you, as it later turns out. But they felt very strongly, and I was very happy to have that support, that for an Hispanic woman to be able to have the helm of our national immigration policy would be a good thing, and I've never regretted it.
Well, it took a lot of courage to leave. Not that you were in a position that wasn't already challenging as a U.S. Attorney of the Northern District, I believe, of Texas, and then to take another challenge that, I think as a former immigration practitioner for many years, probably one of the top 10 hardest jobs in the United States of America is to be the Director of Immigration and Customs Enforcement.
Yes, it was a very challenging one. You can, as an example, the first time I testified before Congress on immigration issues in the state of the agency, I was fully expecting to be reamed over by one side of the House, but I was equally reamed over by both the right and the left. Either we were not removing enough people from the country, or we were removing too many. So a lot of it was just intestinal fortitude and getting through that. It would have been a wonderful thing to do, and this sounds a little Pollyannish, it would have been a wonderful thing to have Congress helping me improve my agency and our mission, rather than have these hearings where really there was only grandstanding. I'm not sure. Many questions were asked where the person was particularly interested in the answer, as opposed to the ability to make their own point. And that's too bad, because I really think it should work the other way. I think anybody in Washington's going to laugh at me for having thought that, but it's true. I was hoping it would be a more positive thing.
Well, maybe that's a message that people need to hear, right? People considering either running for office or holding important executive positions.
Yeah, I think so. And again, it's not for everybody. It's not for everybody, but it is a important thing to serve your country in whatever capacity, either as a soldier, which is obviously vital to our national security, but also in these roles that are fairly thankless, but important to serve. And quite frankly, I just don't think we have enough women that consider that as a career, and I really would love to encourage women and then in particular Hispanic women, because we have so much to contribute. We have a perspective that's unique. We have a heritage and a community who that cares so much for family, for community. We're respectful. We listen well, and we have a varied experience that maybe not the typical person serving in some of these positions does. And again, it's doable and reachable if you give it a try.
And the opportunity, like you said, right?
Yes.
Be open to the opportunity.
Right.
Is a message that I'm taking away from your life's and professional story. And so what do you think you're most proud of looking back at that time at Immigration and Customs Enforcement?
Well, I'm proud of the fact that we had a workforce of 20,000 employees across 46 nations, and that I was their nominal leader anyway. They seemed to do quite well without me, before me, and after me. But while I was there, I was very proud to represent those 20,000 employees. And one of the things that I think people don't appreciate is that ICE's, Immigration Customs Enforcement's mission is extraordinarily broad, and our authorities are vast, obviously because we have an international presence in addition to a domestic mission. But it's important to have leadership that can tell you, frame the mission for you, frame the importance of what you're doing, and encourage you to go further. So I'm very proud of the fact that in that 1 year, in between, starting in 14, in 15, and then 16, and then leaving on January 20th at noon of 2017, that we were able to improve our employee satisfaction by 11%, which was extraordinary. Got the attention of the secretary, my boss, of the Department of Homeland Security, and was so satisfying. And it wasn't anything magical. It wasn't anything magical. It wasn't anything extraordinary that I did, but I think just the presence of leadership, a presidentially appointed, Senate-confirmed director, someone who is interested in what they're doing and what they need to do their job well. This is not a complex thing. It's just connection with your workforce, and I'm really proud of that we were able to give them that for the period of time we were there. And mind you, I didn't do it alone. I had very good immediate director staff like yourself and others who helped me try our best to get it right.
Well, since you opened it up, you were our fearless leader.
Fearless is right. Yeah, well, I got it from all sides, but I'm fairly intact and survived, and I'm happy to have done it.
And we thank you. Thank you for your service. And I believe you're the last Senate-appointed director that we've had since you've been there. Is that correct?
Yes. Real problem.
Tell me more.
Well, if immigration is as important as at least the politicians make it out to be, which I agree with, it's important for so many reasons, not just for keeping people out of the country who shouldn't be here, but also for helping those who come through the legal means accomplish their dream and work with our sister agency, Citizenship and Immigration Services, to help them do that. I really think the agency should be given the nod and the support of the administration by making sure there's leadership, capable leadership in that position, and that just hasn't happened since 2017. I'm disappointed, and I'm hopeful that may change.
Will you ever get the thought that maybe you want to go back and try to fix that broken immigration system that everybody talks about?
No, let's let fresher blood take it and give it a try. But I tell you what, it was a fascinating experience, especially on our international mission. We do a lot of vetting of people who want to come into this country overseas before they even get here. Investigations, our Homeland Security investigation side of the house, which people don't seem to focus on. There's 12,000 or more now agents. 6 of them are in removal operations, enforcement operations, and 6,000 of them are in Homeland Security investigations. And we do things as extraordinary as save the children who have been, sometimes infants, who have been trafficked and sold. That's not uncommon, and tackle transnational criminal organizations. So these are important tasks, and who wouldn't be proud of leading an agency like that? I think the agency gets a bad rap. There's certainly lots of things to improve. In my opinion, that is a matter of legislation and reform, and not the employees who are doing it. They're doing their jobs.
Yeah, and just to go back to your comments a little bit earlier, you said you didn't do anything that was, out of the ordinary, but you were a great champion, a person who could tell the story of the work of the agency and its importance to our nation and those who are seeking to come to the United States, et cetera. So that in itself, as I observe it, is pretty extraordinary.
Thank you, Liz. I'm very proud of it. I'm also proud of our partners out in the immigration, on the immigration defense side, that are trying to help people navigate through this extraordinary system. I applaud those, and I think there's more need for people, even with the Dallas Bar, on a volunteer basis, who can take a little bit of their time. The members of this bar have stepped up in so many circumstances, in so many areas, including immigrant representation, that I hope we continue to see the importance of that and assist.
I would agree, and then there's always room for more people to come and take a case and be mentored by somebody who has more experience, or work with one of our nonprofit agencies that are representing an asylum seeker or somebody who has been a victim of a crime, et cetera. So thank you for flagging that for the people who are listening today, because I know there's always that necessity.
And now that you mentioned that, another aspect that's not focused on is we have 1,000 lawyers in ICE who represent the United States in litigation, civil, criminal, otherwise, appeals. An extraordinary group of people who do such extraordinary work and important work. What comes to mind quickly is the recovery of things stolen from the Jewish community during World War II, where we tried to help recover artifacts that were stolen. A lot of it is art. It is such a satisfying thing to do and to be a part of, is to do that kind of work, representing people who were brutalized in a systematic way during our world wars. I mean, all of that is just really important work, and that's what part of this 1,000 lawyers do. Not enough. I hope that people who watch this get an impression and a appreciation for public service, because you're not going to get wealthy in the United States government as an employee, as you and I both know very well. But the work is responsible, it's important, and you are giving back to your country.
Had you considered pursuing a role in public service before that encounter with Judge Jane Bullill?
Not really. Not really. Once again, you don't know what you don't know. And I didn't think about it nor thought of it. I will say that in my mind, somewhere in the depths of it, Judge Sanders, Barefoot Sanders, for whom I clerked straight out of law school, would begin every day when we saw each other with the comment. It's somewhat just thrown out there, but there was substance behind it too. What have you done for your country today? And he was a man motivated by public service. He was part of the Johnson administration, served as special assistant to the president, and was a politician at one time. And so he meant that. He meant, think about, especially those of us who are so fortunate to have gone through education and the wonderful things this country has to give. Think about giving back at some point in your life. All I was interested in was having a career in a respected profession and making some money. That's the way I started out, in a large law firm here in Dallas. But as opportunities came up, doors opened, I was steered towards the public service end, and that's the way I ended my professional career. And I am so much the better for it. It really helps you, if nothing else, appreciate your value and the things you can bring to the table.
Well, there's certainly nothing wrong with making a little money, right, to pay for that law school. And
Or to feed your families. There's nothing wrong with that. But if you have that ability to do that, if you've got the right conditions that you can do that, I just got to say, I am for exploring all of those.
But you had both opportunities, right? You pursued both opportunities, not only in private law, but also in public service.
Sure did. One of the fortunate ones.
Any favorites?
Between the two?
Mm-hmm.
Well, we had some great cases and clients in the private sector, but there's nothing like making life better for others, particularly those who are not as fortunate as you are. So it's hard to beat work as a lawyer in the public area.
Well, I bet Judge Sanders is pretty darn proud of you. And, he was a North Dallas high school bulldog where I went, and he was an icon in our community. And I think that somebody from my generation who looks to see legends like you and just kind of maybe not seeing myself, rise to that level of achievement necessarily. I mean, what would you tell perhaps your younger self about what you've accomplished, and also what would you tell next generation young women out there who might be looking at this, and what would you say to encourage them in their journey?
Yeah, I think the most important thing, and this is whether you're a man or a woman, but I think it really serves well to remind my female counterparts to be authentic, to work to assess what grabs you, what interests you, knowing yourself and recognizing that you've got a contribution to make, but always remaining true to yourself. I remember starting in law practice, and I think there'll be a few smiles out there from others who experience the same thing. Now, we're talking about the mid to late 80s when I started out. That's been a few years. I counted it the other day. I think it's 40 years. I graduated in 1984. That's 40 years. I didn't have people that looked like me necessarily around me. I certainly didn't have other Latinas in the law firms I started with. But females were not that common. At that time, I think in 1984, there were about 8% of the entire legal cohort in the United States, 8% were women. And then even today, Latinas represented in the lawyer workforce is something like 3%, maybe even a little less than that. It's a wonderful profession. There are so many things you can do as a lawyer without even practicing a day of law, quite frankly, because there's training that you get that helps you to understand there's two sides to every story, presenting an argument and a position and supporting it with facts. And so it's challenging. The options are so many. Certainly private practice, government agencies, leadership in Congress. I mean, a lot of them are lawyers, not all of them, but it is a important service that we provide as lawyers, even in the private sector. But certainly, it is a voice that we can bring to those that had no voice, or those who can't, articulate their position the way we were trained to do. So I hope people understand that lawyers have some value, and that we serve an important part of our public workforce.
Having been through your whole life experience from childhood to young adult life to pursuing a college degree to getting into law school at a time when there weren't many of us who were matriculating into law school as Latinas, as women, and then going into private sector at a large law firm in Dallas, just pretty unprecedented for a Latina. The statistics are not in our favor. Have you seen it change over the years in a positive direction? And what do you think could be done to move that needle at a more accelerated rate?
That's the question, and it's been a question for a long time. Certainly in the 4 decades that I've been in this area, the law, and one thing that is so important to me. I know you do this a lot. I try to do this, is to lend a hand to others. There's nothing to me more important than spending some time with young women and telling them what is possible. There really is will and determination are certainly necessary, but there is so much out there in terms of resources that can be used to assist you, people who can support you, can kind of help you understand what's ahead of you, that I really hope that more women, and Latinas in particular, step up to do this, because while we have seen some gains, I am delighted to know how many more judges, for example, both in the state system and in the federal system, we have in North Texas in particular. The first Latina to be appointed and confirmed to be on the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals, an appellate court full of history and extraordinary decisions, that with Justice Ramirez being confirmed last May. I'm so encouraged by that. Obviously, she knew no limits. She's from Tokyo. Did you know that? She's from Tokyo, Texas. Tokyo. And she has humble beginnings, her story also, but man, she made it. And of course, the pinnacle of our legal world is Sonia Sotomayor on the Court of Appeals. You know that my husband and I were going into a restaurant that morning when she had her investiture at national TV. And I sat there and I cried, because the import of the moment just really came down on me that talk about the ultimate barrier in the legal field to be appointed to the Supreme Court of the United States, which really makes these decisions that frame our lives every day. And we have a woman of Latino origin on the Supreme Court. Now, I won't be satisfied with one, but it was a beautiful moment. And I think probably a lot of women, not just Latinas, but a lot of women felt that sense of pride when they saw her. Another fascinating story. I recommend her book. I'm not getting any commission for this recommendation, but I recommend her book highly on her origins and how she made it through.
Growing up in the Bronx.
Yes, in the Bronx, of all places.
And speaking of books, I'm sitting here in awe of this opportunity to be in your presence and to hear your story and to be inspired and to thinking about when you took the oath in your investiture, being present in that moment when in that federal court building where it was like filled. There was only, standing room only. One of those people that had got a ticket to get in, but feeling so much pride myself in somebody that had risen to the ranks, above all ranks, and for what it meant for our community, our Hispanic community, our Latino community, but also our community writ large, for the state of Texas, for the United States of America, to represent to regard a person of your caliber, a person of your experience, to be recognizing them for what they bring, the talents that they bring to the positions. It was just a moving moment for me as a young lawyer. And so I can relate when you say you sort of had tears when Justice Sotomayor took her oath of office, because it's a ripple effect. When one of us achieves, we all achieve in a sense. And so I just wanted to thank you for that. And my next question is, when do we get to buy the book?
Yeah.
Of Sarah.
You and my family. I think my family must have put you up to this.
I did not speak to Lupe.
No book. This is why I try to do public seminars and speak to kids in particular, is because I think sharing the story is important, but I don't have the discipline to write. I was trained to talk and talk a lot, and as a lawyer, and so I will say my piece in that way. But I thank you for your comments, Liz. But I will tell you, all of us have people we look up to that have broken down barriers and worked towards something that seemed unreachable. And I admire and respect all of those people. The women I mentioned, those of us in our community who have sacrificed a lot, as you did with your family, taking the kids with you first to Washington when I asked you to come and help us on the immigration front, and then never mind your husband, and then having to live without them for a period of time. Those stories are not told. I love to tell others about it because it does take sacrifice, but in the end, look at you now.
Well, there's nothing like having to serve your government and to do it in a way that brings meaning to your life as well. So I thank you for giving that opportunity, not only to me, but to so many other people whom you have mentored and inspired and encouraged in the legal profession. So I guess I want to end by asking you, what words of encouragement would you like to leave for those graduating perhaps from law school around this time?
As I said, figure out who you are, because not all of us, even at that age, when we're graduating from law school, really know that. Figure out who you are, what appeals to you, what you believe you can bring to the table, and reach for the stars. Don't sell yourself short.
Can you repeat what Lupus said?
Yes, don't you reach out as hard as you can, and don't settle. Don't settle. So I really do recommend that. I know it's not like an easy thing to do, but it is so, in the end, so satisfying to feel like you've accomplished something in your own little small way, um, to better the lives, certainly of yourself, but better the lives of others who are deserving.
Well, I feel there's so much more you're going to do, even as accomplished as you already are, all the contributions you've made to the legal community and beyond. I know you're so invested in the community, on boards, in philanthropy. Any thoughts on what might be next for Sarah Saldaña?
I love, I don't know if you're aware of this, you are aware of this actually, but federal employees are governed by certain things that they can say and can't say. When you represent the United States in your capacity, you can't just go off blabbering on your own, as I'm very inclined to do. So I feel like I've had a muzzle on for all of this time, both as United States Attorney and as the Director of ICE. And I'm letting it rip now, because I, whether you want it or not, I give you my opinion. I try to do what I can to encourage others, and so that's my mission at this point, is to go down swinging, trying to work for what's right, and to help those that haven't been as blessed as I have been in my life, professional and personal.
Well, I hope and I look forward to seeing you on the circuit to tell your story and to give your opinion that's also an expert opinion. It's important.
Thank you, Liz.
Thank you. And thank you for joining us today on this edition of Dallas Bar Association's Living Legends series.